Thank you so much for joining Associations Creating Community podcast. I'm Jefferson Glassie with the Whiteford, Taylor, and Preston associations, nonprofit organizations, and political organizations practice. And we've been having these conversations with, some amazing association leaders to talk about community, because that's really what associations are and what, we strive to do. So I'm very happy, privileged, honored, whatever else I could say, to be able to talk today with amazing association CEO, a new fellow who I just met not that long ago, and have been just so excited to be able to have more of a conversation. Artesha Moore, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today for this conversation. It's wonderful.
Well, you just, since I've met you even just a few weeks ago at the ASE Fellows meeting, I've just been very impressed. I mean, what you've been doing in your career and how you just relate to people. So I was like, oh man, let's see if we can connive her into having an interview about community, because I know you have some things to say.
Yeah.
So you have been with associations for some time, most recently with the geophysical.
Yeah. I was with the American Geophysical Union for about 4.5 years before taking my current role at Association Forum in Chicago. And I was blessed to work with some great leaders there. And then prior to that, I was with the Association for Professionals in Infection Control, and I was there in healthcare for 13 years, which actually got me to cut my teeth a bit. I had a few stints at other associations prior to that, but I think at APIC, it really took my kind of business development, product development to the next level.
Yeah, it's so amazing, because I mean, I just think association as executives in general rock and are like some of the stars of the world, and having that background with different membership types. And now Association Forum, I mean, this is kind of like the ASAE of Chicago and the rest of the world outside DC in a way. And so big congrats on that. I mean, how's it all going? You moved up there and you got new habits and new everything.
I will say this, it has been a wonderful adventure. And really, at this point in my leadership, a real test to learning and pushing me to actually open up to new learning, right? I've been doing association management for a little over 20 years and in different roles behind the scenes. So actively stepping into not just a CEO role, but to be association of associations is really a big leap, right? I will say, and I was talking to some folks last week, I'm in a really blessed position because my board are all so supportive of association leaders. So they are more in the sense of not just hit the ground or what are these metrics, but really, are you sleeping? Did you eat today? That part, because they all know what it's like for me. So I'm blessed for that. And then to be able to serve the group that changed my life. Associations, I went from not just having a job to a career that has impact. That was life-changing. And so to get back to that, hey, I'm living the dream.
It's so great. I mean, following in the footsteps of Michelle Mason.
Oh my goodness.
I know, not to put any more pressure on you there, but I as a lawyer, I mean, I first started working with associations back, before dawn of history. But as a lawyer, ASAE and the association community, this is my community. This is my profession. I love associations. It's been a great career, and I couldn't be more supportive of what we're doing. I mean, our firm also, just to get in a quick plug before I forget to say it, we're a founding donor of the John Graham DEI fund at the ASAE Foundation, and we really couldn't be prouder to do that. I'd like to ask a little bit about your perspectives on community and associations, and we can go down any rabbit holes or different
Mm.
paths you want. But, at the American Geophysical Union, it was kind of, your title was something different, but it was almost like community manager in a way,
Right, right.
member engagement and all that. I mean, how did you view it there, and what did you see, and what are your thoughts about community and associations?
Yeah, I will say at the AGU when I was there, it was helpful because my job was kind of this beautiful Voltron of put together things. I am a membership and components expert or of sorts, whatever that means, but also a technologist and the business of learning, so workforce development. So AGU gave me an opportunity to kind of put this whole thing together. Member engagement in any way we look at it is really around career engagement. So being able to kind of guide the workforce development, I think is really where we have the sense of community. So whether it is access to people who can help you, like meeting at a retreat, and now look where I'm at, right, on the podcast today, or awareness of an idea that came from, I went to many good ideas, great ideas conferences of ASAE and went back to work and like, oh, wow, because the community exposed me to something that I wanted to try. But I think right now, when I think about one of the things that we do, I am also blessed to be an ASAE Diversity Executive Leadership Program Scholar, so a DELP scholar. And I think about how associations, ASAE, Association Forum, other groups, have made it so that inclusive leadership, here's what it looks like. For others that maybe aren't ready to lead their industries in that way, being members and saying, here's a group that you can hold a measure to see how it works, what it looks like. I think that that's the exciting part of where we are today in creating community. So for me, as an association of associations, but even at the American Geophysical Union, being able to support young scientists coming from the Congo region in Africa to get a voice, to be able to get access to resources to help their science, that's life-changing. And that's what we get to do as association professionals. I'm not a scientist, right? But to be able to kind of touch that and make access points for them and create their own sense of community. So I love the word community because it means so many different things: career trajectories, support, access to information. But then in that broader sense, those scientists from the Congo, they're going to save the planet.
Yeah.
And I got to be a part of a little bit of their connection.
Wow. Yeah. And DELPA is such a great program.
Yes.
ASAE really does well with that, for so many people, scientists in Africa or wherever, there can be a feeling of sort of isolation in what you're doing if you're not with other peers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really understand people who don't want to be involved with their peers and learn from their peers. But to me, an association in whatever field it is, whatever profession or industries and their professions, and all the professions and industries in the world are really represented by associations. So, it's quite a powerful community of associations, to just be able to talk with other people, to meet other people, see where you are, get education, mentorship. So important to just be able to do the best you can, with that help.
It's interesting you say that because that's why I sit in this seat right now. The networks and the people and the connections that I've been able to make through all of the professional groups that I have been able to be a part of, both working and volunteering. One of the things that's interesting, though, for us is now we're the encroaching of our industry by for-profit. And it didn't start during the pandemic. It really started 20 plus years ago when LinkedIn opened its gates, right? 25 years ago. And you say, well, we are trusted community. But slowly in the acceleration, this new generation of leaders, I just got exposed to things like this whole chat function of Discord. Well, what is this? That people have private social networks that aren't Facebook, that aren't Twitter, but they still have community. So I do think that as things like for-profits, the master classes of the world, the sense of the Reddit boards, that people do have connection, what is it that we in our industry can learn from that too?
Yeah, that's for sure.
And that's where, the future of that is, I think.
And to continue down a topic that we've touched on a little bit, the world really needs, I think, our communities to be inclusive,
Mhm.
because it's those exclusive, there's my bird clock. I don't know if you can hear the bird clock or not, but that's a bird clock if you hear it. Um, things just don't quite, they may seem like they go more smoothly if you're with a whole group of, homogeneous people. But
Mhm.
when you really learn, as I think, and I hope more and more people around the world, but in associations are learning with ASAE's, sort of leadership, it's a whole different thing when you have people from all different kind of walks of life, different races and creeds, and scientists or not, and perspectives. It
Mhm.
just makes everyone better. I think it's inclusive community is really a strong thing.
Yeah. And it's needed. And I think one of the issues that we're struggling with as an industry, and I know even at Association Forum, is how do we excite the next generation of leaders to continue to tap into that? So I'm on my listening tour. I've only been in the role for 4 months. And having conversations with folks and hearing from managers or directors that felt like, oh, well, I didn't know if this was really accessible to me. That's where my boss goes, right? I'm not.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, don't you want a community or like-minded peers, or to hear maybe ideas? Well, yeah, I want those things, but I didn't think the association would would be the place for that. That's interesting, because in my early part of my professional trajectory, I knew to go to the association because my boss told
Mm.
me, and I thought, okay, well, that's the way that, to make those steps. Now there's almost this distrust of the boss's network.
Mm.
So it was an interesting kind of paradigm shift. And I thought, well, then what we need to do is talk more amplified about the benefits to them as people, and not just the brand of associations or the community. Because to them, community could be what they put together on Twitch.
Mm. Right.
Wow. Or Patreon, which is another kind of for-profit community base that now is paid access. Well, that's what associations did for so long, right? And now
Right.
this Patreon, any content creator can create their own community and charge access fees to it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we just have to, you know, co-live with all these folks.
Yeah.
So when you were at AGU, were there any particular things that you tried out that you could say might have been to build community that kind of worked, in case, anybody's listening who
Yeah.
like some tips or to benefit from your experience and that you gained there?
The one thing that I will say that AGU really helped, it was the partnering, I think, with other entities outside of traditional funders, whatever that was, to come up with solutions that align with our values. So for instance, we had a deep partner with NASA, aligns with the organization, but we had a mission around diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. There was action steps of how the community was going to hold us accountable to really attacking systemic racism and those particular things. Instead of just building access communities, right, like online communities to talk about things, we built it into everything that we did. So when I partnered with NASA and they were looking for workforce, there was an alignment piece. So we built, and I was able to build a partnership with a group to do virtual mentoring.
Mm.
Well, built into that virtual mentoring platform were things, a for-profit company, to build the platform, but also things like, how do we make it more accessible? How do you build in things like readability? Or for those who can't read, how do they interact with it? Is it a voice command? Those particular pieces. It made me think, how many of folks in our communities don't have access just because they can't hear it, see it, interact with it.
Wow.
So I've been now, even at Association Forum, building in things like every one of our presentations will have closed captioning. It seems like a small thing, right? So we just had a conference, an event a couple of weeks ago. I remember this insistence of having this closed captioning. I forgot that I was a hot mic when I was talking about my tennis shoes behind the screen, that it was on all the words on the screen, but it did inspire someone. And my board chair said when her staff saw it, they came back to the office the next week and said, we need to have closed captioning on all of our presentations.
Nice.
So it's those kind of things that you can build into your community efforts that would just get the next level of people who didn't feel like they could access it.
Wow, yeah, that's great. I mean, sometimes the fine granular steps mean a lot and can really, go to build bigger things. So then you've moved on to this. Yeah, it is really something, the Association of Associations, but how have you learned some things, nothing confidential that you don't want to share, but learn some things on your listening tour, or seen some things about the association community, maybe in general or in Chicago, and what it's telling you?
We need to accelerate our thinking as startups in a way that is very different than what we've been preaching as startups for 20 years, right? So we've all said this kind of thinking of, this is the new whatever inside the 100-year-old bubble, right? We're gonna bring innovation or disruption. We've said it, but we haven't had to do it, and now we do. So things like the Great Resignation. Well, that's been bubbling for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been like, okay, we'll give you 1 day of work from home per week, or we'll do this other thing, or we'll have casual Friday, or we'll have this kind of pieces. But what I'm finding, both in my organization, staff-wise, as well as with the membership, is they want to solve real problems. They want to have real pieces of ownership. They don't want to just kind of kick it down the road. They want to own the big, scary thing. And when you give them a little piece of that, they're like, all right, let's get it, right? Like, let's do it. So I told Michelle Mason recently in a conversation with her that she set this up so beautifully to come in to take these really risky shifts because the leaders are trusting. The community is well connected. But I do think and I told her, she's got the bigger thing. She's got an ocean liner, right? Like, I just have a Miami Vice speedboat. I can change it around, because all of us as the SAE, state societies, and ASAE, our competitor is ResearchGate. It isn't each other. It's LinkedIn. It's these discords or whatever that we have to coexist with. But they're now encroaching on our business, credentialing, community, right, education,
Right.
Professional development, and they're doing it masterclass beautifully, subscription models. So the more that we can also band together around the things that our community, to the point of what you said in the beginning, the access to this isn't about the widget, it is about the people. It's about the care. It's about the giving so freely of associations to support each other, and then empower those professionals to go and change the world, whatever industry, right? So I think we have a beautiful time, and my listening tour has doubled down at least that I'm not totally off the mark.
Oh, well, that's great. It doesn't sound like you're on the mark. It sounds, I believe in the bigger mission, the bigger purpose, the grand challenge part of these things, because, I help, associations with, contracts or different governance issues and things like that. But in the long run, in the big picture, it is really about kind of making the world a better place if you can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
associations are so well situated because we're about community, and the earth is a community. And I've said this before, with all associations being representing all the industries and professions of the world, the association execs are like they're on top of the world.
Mm.
And they know how to manage nonprofit, non-owned organizations and have them run by good governance, consensus, and working with people as opposed to just saying, no, we're doing this. So I love what you're talking about. And you do sense people as part of this great resignation or great realization, wanting to do more in whatever format through the communities.
Yes and no. And here's the no part. The part that I'm hearing, and it's interesting, but it is around governance structure. So part of our business is governance to build levels. Approval, authority, decision-making, those things. That's what oversight has been for decades. So this new kind of crux, and again, I've probably talked to individually about 50 or so different levels of professionals in the last 4 months. But then also I've been an association professional my own self, right, for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So as I look at this, I think, okay, here's where now this new power structure, 35-40, they don't want to serve on committees for 18 years to get to the board.
Mm-hmm.
They also want to solve real things in a way that has lasting impact. We don't want to keep solving this problem 20 years down the road, keep kicking it down. So, but how do you make it so that you have fluid governance decision-making structure where you don't lose it to the whim of whoever comes in every day? That's the balance now that I think, and I'm listening. Association Forum is a strategic partner with ASAE on their new Association Insight Center. And one of the things that we've been talking about as this group goes forward is this thing around governance. What does governance really look like in the future of things? Not in 2019, but in 2030.
Mm-hmm.
And who's in the governance? So I've been really on this kick for me that I want to get someone on my board that, dare I say it, less than 35. Why? Because it would change how the conversation is had about what structures we put in place.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because, I believe that the governance, sort of the guardrails, the format that we have is good. But as you point out, associations have competitors outside.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just do things the same way that you've been doing, it's not going to be as helpful. Yeah, I mean, we think of diversity and inclusion in a lot of different ways, and we don't always think of it as just young people, but boy, oh boy, we need them.
We do. What can we learn? I mean, even the thing, like I said, this discourse thing, my niece is 16. And she's the person who, when my sister said, oh, it's this, I was like, wait, what? I just got with TikTok. Wait a minute, what? They don't even use that, right? So I'm just trying to think, even the way that we think about how we access the next generation of leaders. It's not about pushing our experience as much as it is coaching and guiding to whatever their experience is going to be. So I'm in the beautiful position. Again, my community is small but thriving, but I'm accessible in a way that they're telling me things that didn't even occur to me, right? Like just how they're feeling about things. I thought for sure if we put the board announcement out, everybody would sign up. No, they will not. Why? Because of what they perceive that they have to give in order to be successful in that. Mm. I got to give my whole life, and we only get to make 3 decisions a year, and it takes 10 years to implement. So, right, like that's what they perceive. And in some organizations, the AGU, it did. Yeah. It's a 100-plus-year-old scientific organization. You know what they like to do? Discuss things.
Yeah, right. So, I feel like I could talk with you forever. And I know that there's a lot of things I hope that we will be able to talk about.
Agreed.
Separately down the line in all kinds of ways. But it would be helpful. I would love it if you would be able to, with Michelle Mason at ASAE, they're focusing on conscious inclusion.
Mhm.
I'm curious how you would sort of explain it to somebody, what
Mhm.
conscious inclusion is, and how that can help community.
Yeah, I think in some aspects, both the conscious inclusion and association forum and the work that Michelle started with the forum at Welcoming Environment. I think when you start to think about taking awareness, which is diversity, to the next level, it really is about conscious design. So let me back up to say, when I started doing work with associations and being in positions that dealt with nominating committees and changing leadership competencies and designing kind of pipeline structures to bring diverse leaders forward, there was a mandate for more diversity, but there wasn't a mandate for more thoughtful ways to be equitable when the diverse folks came forward.
Mm.
So what we spent a lot of time doing is trying to let them understand how things worked. So we can recruit. We're conscious about the fact that we need to look diverse. After a few attempts of bringing in different looking, whatever around that diversity wheel, right? Not just gender, not just race, but any of those things. What happened was a negative word of mouth because we weren't really being conscious about really what the inclusion, the equity, the justice that needed to be addressed. So what we found was DEI efforts that only went to the surface. And I think what ASAE, what Association Forum, what other kind of leaders out there are trying to do is really help leaders understand what is needed in order to be conscious about it. So yes, you have awareness, and what my therapist says is then you need to have emotional digestion before behavior change.
Mm.
That is what this new programming is looking at, is to help with that emotional digestion that will lead to what we all hope is a more systemic change, right? Not just on the surface, but really the systemic change.
So really a more holistic,
Yeah.
expansive, comprehensive view and action about how to promote DEI for the betterment of community.
Yeah, and the need to not promote it, but to live it. Because I will just continue to, this isn't a new conversation for us in associations, in the world, in the US. This isn't new. I think right now the time is for real holistic action that's deep, that's both at all levels, personal, the organization, right, the teams, as well as broader society. And this isn't a cry of the young, because there's warriors like yourself that I'm looking at on the screen that have been doing this for decades. It is now a rallying cry of all of us that we're tired. So again, having programming that isn't just about why diversity matters. How many of us sat into that in the last 30 years? Here's why it matters. Globalization. We're already there. We're tired of talking about that. Now we need to take it to what are the things. But here's what I do know in the last 3 years. So many people are stuck at how. Here now you insert some things that maybe will start to take you into maybe try this and this and get to that how, because you don't have to do it grand, but you do have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love to see how it's coming forward. And I love, talking to Michelle, talking at our Welcoming Environment Committee. For us, we're going to a 2.0 stance. The Welcoming Environment has been kind of a trademark of the forum since 2015. But it's time now to move it from the beginning of awareness to really, dare I say it, bold language, so that our community will hold us accountable for that, right? What does that actually look like to not just create awareness, but create safe spaces? So we went back and forth around, do we say safe spaces or not? Yeah, because there are some folks that have been champions that need a safe space to talk, but there's others that may be further than that and want to do something bold, and we want to support both.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's so impressive. You've got a lot on your plate there, but it seems like it's a very full and exciting, glorious
Yeah,
plate.
yeah.
And I'm just really grateful that you've been able to take a little bit of time to talk about some of these things. You know, the more we can talk about it through different venues, I think is good. So,
Mhm.
Tisha, thank you so much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time, and I will look forward to more conversations.
Thank you. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, my friend.
Thank you very much. All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, everybody. Artesha Moore.